The first Hoka Mach X was a disappointing combination of really great shoe name and underwhelming shoe performance. But this is the Mach X2. It's got more premium foam, a taller stack height, and a more aggressive geometry. But will this be enough for this shoe to deliver on its exciting name? Or will this be a repeat year of running shoe dissonance? It's time to lace up the Mach X2 and take it for a run. Yo, what's going on? My name is Kofuzi and I'm a non-elite runner who reviews running shoes here on YouTube. And today I'm going to talk to you guys all about the Hoka Mach X2. But before I give my thoughts on this shoe, I do want to go over some disclosures. This is a pair of shoes that Hoka sent to me for the purpose of a review, so I did not have to pay for these shoes. However, nobody's paying me to make this video or to include their shoe in this video, and no one's gonna get a chance to preview any of my footage or my thoughts before you guys get a chance to see this video on YouTube. So with that out of the way, let's talk about the Hoka Mach X2, and let's start with the specs. This is a 44mm stack height shoe, very tall, with a 5mm drop, giving us 39mm of stack height in the forefoot. And we've got three things going on in the midsole of this shoe. This white layer of foam here is a Pebax top layer. Pebax is a high-end foam that we usually associate with racing caliber foams, but these days we do see it in a wide variety of types and shoes and for a wide variety of purposes. On the bottom, this yellow layer of foam, that's a regular EVA. That's kind of the carrier in which the top layer of the more premium foam sits. So you've got a softer layer and then a firmer layer outside of that to give it a little bit more structure. And in between those two layers, and you can see them through the very large cutouts in the midsole and even in this little one all the way in the top of the shoe, that is a plate made out of a hardened layer of Pebax Renew. This Pebax Renew plate is a hardened version of Pebax, although a slightly different version of Pebax. It's using castor bean oil as the main oil substrate that goes into the making of that plastic. And because that castor bean comes from a castor plant, it is slightly different than other Pebax materials, and it also is a little bit friendlier to the environment. And there's two main things I want to point out about this plate. One is that there is a little wing that you could see on the side of the shoe where the plate sticks out. That lets you know that this plate is there more for stability than it is for rigidity, and it's not there to be like a carbon fiber plate so much as it is there to just kind of help keep all these foams from squishing too much in one direction or another as your foot hits the ground. And the other thing that kind of supports that and goes with the fact that there's wings on this plate is that in the windows of this shoe where you can see the plate, you can see that the plate position starts really high in the foot, in the back, and then it slams down low. And so this little window up front and near the toes of the shoe, you can see that this plate is pretty much touching the ground. And that typically is another feature that shoe manufacturers use, that the foams underneath your foot don't move around too much. So it's another stabilizing element. Now, to protect all the foam that is on this shoe, we do have some zonal rubber placement, which allows for the saving of some weight because there's not rubber covering the entire shoe. And because there isn't that full length rubber layer, it helps the shoe bend a little bit more easily as well. But I will say that where there is a rubber on this shoe, there is a lot of it. It's a rather thick layer of rubber in those little islands where the rubber does exist. Moving to the upper, we have a woven upper with a gusseted tongue, and the material is very different this year than what we saw last year. This year, the material is much more breathable, but it's very scratchy. This kind of material does let a lot of air through, while it also helps retain the shape. But again, it's not the softest material that you could put on your foot. Overall, I do like the way that this upper fits. Hoka is one of the few brands where I'm sometimes in my regular running shoe size, and sometimes I have to size up. This time I went with my regular shoe size 9, and it worked really well for me. The one and only one problem that I've heard from other people is that there is this seam at the back of the heel. Now, while the heel is nice and floppy, which is something I love to see for shoes that I want to run fast in, but some of you have let me know that the seam out here is a little bit sharp, and even though there is a little flap that can cover that seam, it has been giving you a bit of issue in the back of your heel. Altogether, Hoka tells us for a size 10 that this shoe comes in at 9.2 ounces, but for my US men's size 9, mine weighed in at 8.8 ounces or 250 grams. Now that we've finished talking about the paper specs, let's talk about what it's like actually on the road. The Hoka Mach X2 is tall and responsive. The foam has a little bit of a crumple zone kind of feel to it, but overall it's a little bit firmer of a shoe than I would prefer, especially for a shoe that bears the Mach name. Underfoot, it doesn't feel like I'm moving the foam a lot, and that movement of foam is something that you really want in terms of absorbing impact from when your foot hits the ground, and then also having that foam decompress and bounce back to help push you forward just a little bit and give you that energetic bounce that you're looking for in a shoe that you want to move quickly. I don't feel like I'm getting a lot of that dynamic movement of the foam when I'm running in the Mach X2. But on the plus side, I also don't feel like the shoe is nearly as stabilized as some of the design features make it look like it was going to be. Now, personally for me, I don't like stability features in the shoes that I'm trying to run quickly in. So things like a winged plate generally aren't a selling feature for me. Also with the plate position where it starts high in the back and slams down low as you get to the forefoot, I feel like those are all features that are intended to suit a different kind of foot strike than I have. I'm more of a midfoot forefoot striker, but I think that this shoe is going to be designed more for someone who's hitting maybe more of a heel striker. I think that's the person for whom this shoe is going to resonate the greatest, which means that for me and my foot strike that isn't quite perfectly suited for this shoe, it seems like a lot of stuff going on in this shoe for not a lot of benefit that my foot feels when it hits the ground. So for me, the Mach X2 again is a shoe that isn't quite living up to the Mach name. Before we wrap up the video, let's take a minute and step back, see where the Hoka Mach X2 fits within the broader Hoka lineup. Now this one is a little bit more difficult because Hoka makes a lot of different kinds of shoes, and a lot of them have overlapping use cases or might be the same kind of shoe, just targeting different sets of preferences, which is something that I appreciate as someone that reviews shoes and understands that not all the shoes that I like are going to be the shoes that you guys necessarily like. So they're definitely trying to target all different kinds of runners, but it does make it hard to kind of understand the lineup. So I'm going to go over the Hoka lineup as I see it and how I prefer as someone who's more of a midfoot forefoot striker and likes really bouncy squishy shoes. All right, so when we start with a running shoe brand, I always like to start with the Daily Trainer. And for a long time from Hoka, that's been the Clifton. It's great for easy runs, daily training, and even light workouts, you can do it. But there is a shoe from Hoka that I prefer for daily training needs, and that is the Mach 6. This is also a daily training shoe that can handle easy miles, but it also can go fast really well, even though it doesn't have things like a PBA top layer or a P-Bax Renew plate. It's really fun to go fast in this shoe, but it's built for daily training and I've been really enjoying it. Now, for those longer runs that I just want to go long, slow distance, or maybe I want to be a little bit nicer to my feet and just pamper them a little bit, I think that the best max cushion shoe that Hoka makes right now is the Skyward X. It's a really comfy, tall shoe. It's heavy and it's big, but on those days where you don't care about how fast you're going and you just want to get some good miles and time on feet, this is a great shoe to be in. It's very comfortable and it's been working out well for me. Some of you might be saying, well, what about the Bondi? Isn't that what the Bondi is? I really feel like the Skyward X should have been called the Bondi X2. It wasn't for whatever reason. That's never really been made clear to me. But if you like the Bondi but want something a little bit more modern, I feel like the Skyward X2 is going to deliver for you. Now for racing, the shoe that I like from Hoka the most right now, and they've got a couple, is the Cielo X1. It is a little bit bigger and it is a little bit on the heavy side, but for me, it's been really fun. And as someone that lands in the midfoot, forefoot area, the way that this shoe is set up really works well for my stride. I do wish it were a little bit lighter, but for the miles that I've been putting in this and then the fast miles that I've been putting in this, I've been having a really good time. And so the workout shoe that I would put in here, there's a couple of different options. Yes, you can maybe put the Mach X2 in there. Maybe you could put the Cielo Road, but I think the shoe that kind of fits the best for me in the kind of like faster workouts, mile repeats, or faster kind of stuff is the Rocket X2. Now this is going to be a little controversial because I think for some of you, you're using the Rocket X2 as your marathon racer, but for me, I find that I don't love the Rocket X2. It's a little bit on the firm side for me for racing 26.2, but for shorter distance races or really fast repetitions, something where I do want a plate, the Rocket X2 I feel like fits the bill really nicely. And so you might be looking at this lineup and saying, well, where does the Mach X2 fit? For me, the Mach X2 would probably go in place of the Mach 6 if you wanted to insert it in a lineup, but I prefer the Mach 6 over the Mach X2. It's lighter, it's bouncier, it's softer to me. I prefer being in the Mach X6 versus the Mach X2. So in my ideal Hoka lineup, the Mach X2 doesn't make the cut. Now let's wrap up the video by going over the buying guide and also discuss two alternatives that you might want to also consider. The Hoka Mach X2 brings premium materials to a shoe intended for daily training and for some workouts. The setup of the shoe makes me think that it's going to be best suited for people who are heel strikers and also those people who really enjoyed the first version of the shoe, the Mach X1. But even so, at $190 that the shoe comes in at, I think that's just too expensive. And for most of you, if you're interested in this shoe, I'm gonna recommend that you go look at last year's Mach X1. It comes in at $135 and it gives you a sense of what Hoka's trying to do with the Mach X line. But now let's also consider some alternatives and see where the $190 retail price for the Mach X2 stacks up. I think the first shoe that came to mind to me when I read in this shoe was from Asics, and that's the Magic Speed 4. This is another shoe that uses a daily training foam and has a premium foam insert. Now, there isn't as much of the premium foam in the Magic Speed 4. There's only a little core or puck of their FF turbo foam that's in this shoe, but this shoe is also plated and has an upper more designed for daily training, and they serve the similar purpose in terms of where it would fit into your running shoe rotation. But the different plate position in the Magic Speed 4 better suits my running gait. It's also lighter and cheaper, coming in at $170. And the last shoe that I want to talk about today comes from Mizuno, and that is the Wave Rebellion Flash 2. Now, this is the shoe that I think in terms of the overall sensation is the closest that you're gonna get to the Mach X2. I feel like they both have really tall sidewalls and a big channel that's cut out underneath. The Wave Rebellion Flash 2 goes all the way and completely removes all that foam from the center channel of the shoe, while there are still some kind of structural struts and supports that go across the two sidewalls of the shoe. And each of these shoes has a plate that isn't made out of carbon, and they each use a combination of foams, with the Wave Rebellion Flash 2 using NRZ Light Plus, their premium racing foam, as a top layer, and then a regular EVA layer on the bottom. And this shoe, I think, is also specifically intended and targeted towards heel strikers as well. So I feel like the most overlap happens between these two shoes. The Wave Rebellion Flash 2 feels a little bit more daily trainer to me than daily trainer / speedwork shoe that I'm getting from the Mach X2, but the Wave Rebellion Flash 2 is lighter and also, again, cheaper, also coming in at $170. So those are my thoughts on the Mach X2. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions about this shoe or any of the shoes that I talked about today, or better yet, stop by the live stream that I do over on the Kofuzi Run Club channel Mondays and Thursdays. I'd love to see you guys over there in the chat. That's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks so much for making it all the way to the end of this video. Hopefully you guys are staying safe out there on your runs, and I will see you in the next one.
Yo, what's going on?